happiness can also be starting a dream career or getting that dream job that you want, but you're coming at it from a really different energetic space. And I'm proud to say I'm almost at that number and about to up
Wow.
it, which I did never did I think 3 years ago that I would be able to say that after
So
3
you're
years.
actually tracking and counting how
Yeah,
many people you're making.
yeah,
What a cool idea.
very loosely. But
I like it.
it's the people that you impact that you then go on to impact others because you're teaching them a new way to live.
Yeah.
And that naturally ripples on to the teams that they lead, or, I work in sport as well. So the athletes are then rippling that onto others as well.
Welcome to 99 Humans. My name is Jeff LaCosta, curious coach and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, striving to understand how little things generate big impact.
And I'm Nadia Carta, tech executive and lifestyle coach with a mission to transform lives and corporations by kindling hearts to generate a zeal for life.
Each week, we investigate stories about the human side of leadership to re-energize your spirit and help you become a stronger leader.
Because the reality is that leadership is messy, goofy, challenging, but always human.
Thanks for spending time with us today. Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome to another episode of 99 Humans. I am so excited to be here with the incredible Nicky Brown, leadership coach and founder of Coach to Grow. Nicky, where does this podcast find you in the world?
So I am in Scotland, in the United Kingdom, in Glasgow, but I am originally from Liverpool, which is where the disconnect in the accent is.
Oh, I love it. Liverpool. So I lived in the UK for about 3 years. I went to school in Leeds, and then I worked for Parliament for a little bit.
Wow.
But the coolest concert, anytime anybody asks me, like, what's your favorite concert? Which is, I feel like, a very common icebreaker. It was seeing the Gorillaz live in Liverpool.
Wow.
So your city means something, very much to me.
Well, there is a city that's captured. Obviously, it's where the Beatles are from, and music and football are what the city are about, right? So I love that your favorite concert was in the city that was born for music. So, and where are you from? Where are you based?
I am in Atlanta, Georgia. So been here about 4 years. Yeah, we really love it. We moved from city life for a long time to now we're very country life, living on a lake with a boat and a different pace here. A little bit of COVID life change, like I think a lot of us had, but very lucky.
Nice. And have you got alligators close by?
No, fortunately not. It gets too cold where we are, but it's definitely something we pay attention to. We're like, this will be a little different if there's alligators here.
Okay, amazing.
Well, I know that, you are currently leading and helping others through Coach to Grow, but I would love to start just by understanding your story and how you got to that. You have an amazing resume with a decade at Google, which is one of those, or at Apple, sorry, which is one of those companies. I'm thinking about myself, I guess. One of those companies that people dream of. It's a dream company in some ways, but I also know corporate America is tough. And I've heard you say that there you found out you were addicted to work. And I'm so curious what that means and how you find out something like that.
Really? We're going straight in and I love it. And actually it's Coach to Growth, not Grow.
Ah, okay.
It's a unique spin that only I have. So, okay, so let me go right back because it's important, but I'll speed us up. So I've been around business since I was 10. My dad started his own international business from our home, and I was the first unofficial employee. But he taught me everything about human-centric leadership, which I love and still use to this day. He taught me about business, but he taught me about how to really take care of your people, and your people will take care of your results, right? And then I went on and studied business, and then I've always worked for values-driven organizations, and that was really important for me when I was choosing a brand to work for. Did they model what my dad taught me to be most important, which is people-focused and not just a statement on the wall? They really lived by that. So I work for Gap, and then I work for Nike, and then my last decade in corporate was with Apple. And
huge
all
brands,
three of them were huge in exactly that. So they really helped, again, that values match that I led by, but actually enhanced and really built really fundamental human-centric leadership skills in me. But I was always obsessed with leadership as well. Like we just talked about being from Liverpool. So football was a big part of my upbringing. And actually, I would be obsessed with human behavior of sports managers in rugby and in football and soccer, as we would call, or you would call it. But I would be observing the captain and I would be observing the manager. And then this intersection between corporate and sports has always really intrigued me. Yeah, but sorry, I fast forward a little bit. So where did I find out I was addicted to work? I didn't until the end of my corporate career. But what was the identifiers that maybe others could resonate to? I was working long hours and making excuses for working long hours. Like I would work between 60 and 80 hours every week. And it served me really well, right? I had a gorgeous career, financially secure, promotions, but I would be saying things like, well, I'll just get to this next jump in my career. Or when we get to this salary, or when I win this award, I'll be happy. I'll be happy when, right? And I might not use that exact language, but there'd be something else I was chasing, and then that would feel like it would be enough, but it wasn't. I was always more. And the one that really stuck to me, or really helped me become aware of where I was at, was my boss sat with me, and I'd won some really big awards on a European level. I'd done some really big things this year. I've been rated as one of the top leaders in Europe. And he was sitting down telling me about all of this as part of my review. And my response to him was, great, what's next? Tell me what I'm not great at. Tell me what you need from me now. And he sat so still and just stared at me and was like, Nicky, do you hear what I'm telling you? And I was like, yeah, it's amazing. What's next? Because for me, that felt like such a waste of our time. I get it. Thank you. Got the plaque to tell me, and the award, the Tiffany Award, gorgeous. And that's where I really started to take stock. But it's what I'd learned growing up. My dad was a workaholic. My dad still works to this day, even though he doesn't have to. But from that day, I really started to unpack, well, why is it that I always need this achievement? And it was a behavioral adaptation for not feeling good enough. That's when I then became really obsessed with understanding, well, what does that mean? Really studied behavioral science, went really deep into how this really serves you, and the mind really serves you, or it doesn't. And then I just took a big leap of faith and started Coach to Growth, because there's only so far that skill can take you. And the equation that I use is, I love to take people 100x in whatever that looks like for them, right? But it will also include their whole self, not just their career. It's their whole life. And for me, that's skill building, but it's also this emotional regulation piece. And that's when you go 100x. And we can talk more about that later. But that for me was where I knew I was a workaholic.
Wow. I do want to talk about Coach to Growth and how you're putting this to work to help others. But you've just dropped so many, knowledge bombs here, let's say, or whatever. The one that really resonates with me, that feeling of chasing the next achievement. Okay, I think a lot of us can relate to that. I certainly can. But also that idea of, it served me really well, I think is interesting, right? Like that was helping you, driving you, motivating you to achieve. So I'm curious, how do you distinguish? Because you're still achieving a ton. You're doing incredible things. It just looks different. How did you go about unpacking which achievements were maybe empty and which ones really meant something to you?
Really great question. The difference now the work is done is I'm not reliant on the achievement. So the way that you can measure this is, let's say you fail at something or you don't achieve what you set out to achieve, it really knocks how you feel. Whether that's internal thoughts, whether that's energetically, it knocks your confidence and it can knock you off balance in whatever severity that looks like. It could be you're out of sync for a day. It could be a lot bigger than that. Whereas now and the myth actually when the hyperachiever and you're addicted to work is you don't actually set yourself the goals high enough, because failing is not an option. So you actually limit yourself without even realizing it. You could play much bigger. So the work that I did on myself was actually decoupling my identity being linked to achievement. So when I was able to see, who is Nicky, regardless of if I never achieved anything ever again, who am I? And do I love that? The good parts and the ugly parts, because we all have imperfections, right? So that was the work that I did over a period of time. And I did it in many, many different forms. And there's still rituals to this day that I do every day to keep me in that space. Just like going to the gym, you've got to continually work this muscle, which is your mind. Yeah, you've got to, it was the rituals and the practices that really helped me. But actually now I come from it from a different energetic space of, I love myself wholly. I don't need the achievements. But actually what happens now is it's like a magnet. People gravitate to you differently because it's never about you. I set myself big goals because I'm always in service of others, but there's no part of it that's about me. And my identity is not attached to it. So then I actually play bigger, I can serve bigger, and I achieve bigger. But even if I didn't, that's okay. So I don't have these fluctuations of high and lows. And actually, I also love failing because I find the gift in every failure.
I think it's very counterintuitive, yet it resonates with me that hyperachievers are not actually striving towards the biggest goals because of that fear of failure.
Yeah.
That is very powerful to think about. What is your big goal now? You mentioned, you're working towards this. How do you talk about what's driving you?
Yeah. So so obviously personally, when I left corporate, my goal was to actually stop living to work and learn to work to live. And as part of that discovery work that I did, I really connected to why was I put on this planet? What was my purpose? Even connecting back to what I used to say when I was a kid. And I never knew what I wanted to be as a child, that, where some kids will say, I want to be a space person or an astronaut or I want to be a fire chief. I never had that clarity. What I used to say to my dad, even at a very young age, is I want to make the world better and I want to make it kinder. And I didn't and my dad just allowed that to be, and obviously thought that was beautiful, but was probably worried where that would take me. But I'm finally doing that now. So I have a mission to make 100,000 people happier. And every person that I touch is bespoke to them because happiness is individual, right? But a big part of that is learning to connect to our whole self, which we have when we're really young. And then life gets in the way and we start to life experiences and all the limiting beliefs and all the noise just puts this big cloud over it. And happiness can also be starting a dream career or getting that dream job that you want, but you're coming at it from a really different energetic space. And I'm proud to say I'm almost at that number and about to up
Wow.
it, which I did never did I think 3 years ago that I would be able to say that after
So
3
you're
years.
actually tracking and counting how
Yeah,
many people you're making.
yeah,
What a cool idea.
very loosely. But
I like it.
it's the people that you impact that you then go on to impact others because you're teaching them a new way to live.
Yeah.
And that naturally ripples on to the teams that they lead, or, I work in sport as well. So the athletes are then rippling that onto others as well.
How cool.
I know.
So what makes it still important to have a goal like 100,000 people are happier if it's about kind of the process, the everyday, you're enjoying the failure, you're enjoying that is a tension that I'm kind of noticing of, look, it's not about chasing the goal, but reframing the goal. Maybe it helped me unpack kind of that. It's about the day-to-day work that you love, but there is also still this big, hairy, audacious goal that's, motivating.
Yeah. I think I'm talking about energy a lot, but it's where, of course, I still set big, ambitious goals, but I'm not attached to them. So when I set that 100,000 number, it felt impossible.
Yeah.
But it gave me something like, okay, well, if I want to do something impossible, then I need to act in what feels so out of comfort zone and challenge. I like to be disruptive. I don't like to do what everyone else is doing. So if I'm going to reach this audacious number, then I need to think, act, and be different to get me there. But I'm not coming at it of, okay, I got 99 today. Next week I must get 200. It is just a big goal that's out there. Doesn't matter when I'm going to achieve it. There's other goals that I've got with a deadline as well. But energetically, it's out there. I'm purposeful and I'm intentional, but I'm not attached. And that's the distinction for me. I take intentional action that brings me towards that goal, but I'm not attached, and it doesn't knock my self-worth if it takes me longer. It also doesn't inflate my ego if I get there quicker. It's almost like there's still waves in life, but I can be with it all. There's no like this, no big massive ups and downs. It's like I can be with it all.
I'd love to go there for a minute or two, not to take you to a dark place, but yeah, a little bit.
Excuse
Like,
me. I'm good.
because we're talking about the beauty of human leadership, and so far, oh my gosh, like, okay, you had an amazing, successful career.
Mhm.
You woke up one day, and I'm assuming it was not all this simple, but you woke up one day, I'm addicted to work. Okay, let me start this company. Wow, Zen like waves. And now I'm helping 100,000 people and I'm almost there. Way to go, Nikki. Okay, thanks for being a guest. It must be harder.
Yeah.
Please tell me it's harder, because it sure feels hard over here. So what have been some of those challenges, and how do you overcome them as you're on this pursuit of balancing out the energy at the same time?
Yeah, but you know what? I've definitely been through challenges, and some of them were at the same time. I didn't have this. Growing up for a very long time, we didn't have a lot of money, for example. So that's where my dad was working 3 jobs, but he was still very present when he could be. So there was a lot of that. Mum left very young, so I didn't necessarily get nurture from mum. I've through the time of going on this discovery, I was getting divorced. The first relationship I got into after that was a really abusive one, which I'd never even understood what that was before, other than at a
Oh, I'm so
conceptual
sorry.
level. But actually, all of these things that have happened for me and have made me who I am today. And I can genuinely say through this work, I'm really grateful, because every single thing that happens is a gift. And again, why I can sit here and say that is because whenever something is happening that if I could choose, I would rather it not be. I sit here and say, what is the universe trying to teach me in this moment? And I can feel pain and trust that I can be with the pain, whatever the emotion sitting under that is, and then trust that there will be some beauty at the end of this, even though right now it feels not so great. And there's loads of tools. And if anybody wants any of the resources that I use, I did a lot of studying. I've got my own tools that I've made now. So if anybody wants to tap into any of this, I'm happy to share any of the tools with your listeners. It's probably too much for today's episode.
It is interesting. Just it's a tool in and of itself to look at a painful situation. And if you
Mhm.
can catch yourself in that moment to ask, what is the universe trying to teach me? That really does feel like an incredible tool in and of itself.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest piece of work that I did that really helped me is understanding ego. And conventionally, we know ego is arrogance, and it's actually not. Our ego is how we exist 70% of the time, and it's how we perceive the world through our own lens. And our brain is always looking to be proven right. And whether that's good or bad, and this is how we take care of ourselves internally. But if your ego is always looking to be right, so if I look at this goal is going to be hard as an example, guess what? We're going to find evidence that that goal is really hard. Whereas if I look at the world of, okay, well, this is hard in this moment, but what is it trying to teach me? What is the growth that comes out of it? My ego's now looking for good that could come from this.
Mm.
So it's a really reshifting that, but also I never make it about me, because often when things happen, so even when I was in the abusive relationship, that was horrendous and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I'm doing everything I can from a charitable perspective to help women break free and thrive post those relationships. But it really, when you're able to look at the world differently, I'm able to see that the relationship that I was in was also a broken soul that wasn't doing it vindictively. It was the only way they knew how to be. So I can have some compassion there. It doesn't mean I need to tolerate it, but I can have compassion that that's the way that their ego sees the world and believes that is right. And I hope they go and get help for their own well-being as well as others. But it allows me energetically to detach from what's happened or happening and be able to heal myself, which is what, and forgive what happens, which again is about healing self to get back to the best version of me.
Well, I'm so happy that you've been able to go through that journey. And obviously, you're an incredible woman. I would love to hear how you are helping your leaders that you work with.
Mm.
Can you tell me a story of somebody who has gone on, and done some work internally, and what a difference that's made on their life as well?
Oh, there's so many.
100,000 to pick from.
And what's interesting is what I take my fulfillment from is people getting to their goals. So when I get the call of Nikki, this happened today, and da 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 da, that for me is the most fulfilling. It doesn't feel like a job, and I get those
You're
calls.
like lighting up as you describe it.
Yeah,
So
because
that's very authentic. Yeah.
oh God, I'm trying to think. Everything is bespoke, so I always meet the person where they're at. So whether it's in sport or corporate, or even going into a team and seeing a team that is all high performers but doesn't know how to play together,
Do
like
they
it's like
buy this? You
work.
walk in, and part of me wonders if people are like rolling their eyes a little bit at some of it. Do you find that, or do you
No,
find, oh, bring it on, help me, do the inner work so that I'll perform better on the pitch?
no, they love it
Huh.
because and again, I'll meet people where they're at. So there's some people you can go really deep really quickly. And teach skill, because I do teach leadership skills as well, the basics of like human connection and communication. So you combine them together. Some people want to go right in really quickly, like you have today, and other people you've got to take it slower and meet them where they're at. So I've got so many amazing stories, and I know I'm gonna kick myself when we stop recording. Um yeah, I've got I don't
Are there any examples where the being addicted to work is the right thing? I wonder if there is anybody who's like, yep, that's it, congratulations, or really if that is always a symptom of some work that needs to be done. Because
mm.
I can think of hundreds of people who fit, like I did and do sometimes, that same character. And I wonder if for any of them it's right, or maybe it's just a sign that we're all going on very similar journeys in different ways.
Addicted, no. Is there a time where we all work the magic 40 hours a week that our contract states? No, that's not realistic either. So balance is sometimes you might work less, and then sometimes you might need to work more if there's a challenge or a deadline or a project that you want to work on. But if every week looks like I'm always making excuses to work more,
Yeah.
then that's when we go into, and workaholic is only one. It might be people pleasing, it might be over controlling. There's so many different adaptations. But actually, the studying that I did is that it's the same as being addicted to alcohol or drugs. It's just that we don't see the damage or the impact of it as much because it's all happening internally. But the behavioral adaptation is trying to mask the same wounds that an alcoholic may have or a drug addict may have. But
Hmm.
at least they can see it on the surface. So, no, I don't believe, from my beliefs, there's no ever good that comes from being addicted to work. Do I feel there's periods of life where, still to this day, I don't always have a perfect working week? Like 2 weeks ago, I worked a really long week, but then the last 2 weeks, I've worked really short weeks. So it balances out, right? And I think there's a real difference between addicted and balance.
I think that's a important fresh perspective on this concept of balance, because it does feel easy to me to misconstrue that, because it is a bit of a buzzword, like, oh, we're all looking for balance in our life. Like, well, it doesn't mean every day is going to be split perfectly in the pie graph to what you
Right.
want, but you're kind of looking at this longer term vision of, are you able to get what you need, get what you want, but also give, when it's a busy time, when your family needs you more than they might usually, or when work needs you
Mhm.
more than that's really what balance looks like over a lifetime, rather than the day-to-day kind of balance that might be the easy way to think of it.
100%. Because if you're always at, like me, at 80 hours and then family needs you, where'd you go? You go to
Mm,
burnout because there's nothing left to give, right? Because I know I did not then sacrifice some of that to-do list when family needed me or I was sick or whatever. Actually, what I would do is just add more onto it. And then what happens? I got sick, right? So, or I burn out, or I wasn't, and I'm not doing my best work. Nobody is when they're at that level all the time. The There is a piece around generational as well, right? So my generation was taught to, if you want to be successful, you've got to work hard. So that is the belief system that was put in, and hard meant long. So you had to be the first in, the last out. You would send emails at 7 a.m. thinking, oh, that looks good. It looks like I'm so committed. But actually, this is the other bit to really recognize, depends on what generation of leader that you are, because the newer generations they don't believe the same as we do. And actually last year I was brought in a lot for teams because there's very different ways that people want to be led intergenerationally, but there's real magic if you can be a leader that brings those two together. For example, the latest generations, the Gen Zs, can really teach us, and the Gen Alphas that are coming, teach us how to be really good at that work-life balance. But actually the older generations, the Gen X, for example, they can teach this generation how to have more resilience and grit in a world that's so quick, so easy, and not testing as much. So actually when those two like types of generation learn to link together and cross into skills, the culture in a workforce goes crazy. Whereas actually what I see and when I'm brought in is there's a lot of this happening.
Yeah.
Because you want again, going back to ego, well, I do it this way, well, I want to do it this way, and instead of understanding and learning together, they do this.
So let me push a little because I think I'd like some hope on Gen Z and Gen Alpha. If you read the news, like everybody, I mean, God, those generations get so much shit in the news
Yeah,
for.
they do.
And a little bit of what I hear, and I also value it, and maybe this is my own, biases, but it's like, oh, great, Gen Z is going to teach me how to take it easy, and I need to teach them how to work. Like, are you all, okay, one of these sounds like a great lesson. I want to be on that side teaching people that lesson. But I know because I have hired and worked with so many incredible, hardworking, smart, fun, funny, and still have a lot of what you're saying, Gen Z, younger generational folks. And of course, it's hard to stereotype. But I'm curious, as you're out there seeing these people in the workforce, seeing these teams, what else are you noticing about kind of these generational differences than maybe how I'm horribly stereotyping them?
Yeah, and it is because there's a real tough, well, on both sides, I see both publicizing the negative of each other. And again, I'm generalizing, right? Because it's not always this one black and white way. But what I like to do when I'm brought in is look at both sides. What is, because all of us, even if we take our generations out of it, our strengths also have a shadow side to them as well. So helping both understand and listen to understand, well, what are the strengths of the way that I see the world, and what's the shadow side of that, right? Because if you're looking at a Gen Z, for example, who has a belief that I'm paid 9 to 5 and I'm out, then actually, well, what happens when that project requires us to stay later, right? And the only way they know is 9 to 5, right? So for me, the biggest bit that I would focus on if I was a leader is understanding, well, what strengths can I gain and how do I support the opportunity in that generation? Because we're not living in a world anymore where we have to work a million hours. There's a time and a space for it as well, right? Like, I believe if you're learning a new skill or just starting a new business, realistically, you are going to put more into it if you want to get mastery. And you can look at any top athlete that will say, you look at Kobe or Michael Jordan, they were in the gym first and they were out last. But if you're still doing that 3 decades on, what's happened and what's gone wrong? Because that's just a habit pattern that you need to break, because you probably don't need to build more skill in that area anymore. And if you do, then you're learning the wrong skill because that's been 3 decades.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of jumping about a bit here. So it's learning the strengths of each other and actually recognizing the world we live in now with AI, with the way technology is, you don't need to work that many hours anymore to get to where you want to be.
I love it, Nicky. Such a great conversation. We always end these episodes by asking for a piece of advice. So when you reflect on what we've discussed today, what do you want your parting message to be?
Can I told you I'm disruptive, so I'm going to give a couple. I want to leave with a question, a reflective question. First is, how am I getting in my own way? Where, if I'm really honest, am I self-sabotaging? And what is that holding me back from? So that's my question to leave. And if you really want to do big, important self-development, go on a journey of connection to self. I started with this and I'll finish with this, I'm going to finish with, there's nothing more expensive than your peace. And that was the lesson and the journey that I went on. You can take anything, but you can't take my peace. So actually learning how to become a masterful peacekeeper was the journey that I went on to talk to some of the earlier things. But if you want to get to mastery of that, think about the real careful skills that you want to develop. Add that in with emotional regulation, and that's when you get to your 100x transformation.
Wow. Super powerful. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
No worries.
I have
Thanks.
no doubt you will get folks reaching out, wanting to learn the peacekeeper ways. Where can people find you?
I am quite a secret coach, actually. So I have a LinkedIn, which I do use my LinkedIn quite a lot. And I have a website. My website is coachtogrowth.com. And I do use LinkedIn. And that's the best ways to find me.
Perfect. I will put it in the show notes.
Thank you.
You can add +1 to your 100,000. This has been a conversation that makes me happy. It's great to connect.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I've loved this conversation. It's flew by.
It did. Thank you. Thank you. Until next time. Bye, Nicky.
Bye.